Is going on, guys? It's Yoji. In this video I will go through the Balance Manifesto in a very quick TLDR type of way, giving my opinion and thoughts on how it will affect the game, while also looking at my 5 predictions that I made a few weeks earlier, where I tried to predict patch notes or nerfs coming to Path of Exile 3.12. We didn't even know the league name yet at that time, so this was just like predictions without any information, and the predictions I made were the 5 following. Glancing Blows will be nerfed. Enduring Cry and the left click call to arms shenanigans will be nerfed, but I predicted that it will be a nerf to Enduring Cry specifically. Redemption Sentry Spectres will get a nerf. I also predicted numeric nerfs to the Assassin Ascendancy class, and lastly I predicted a Supreme Ego will get a nerf due to the Impurity immunity build that was appearing at the time. So now let's have a look at the Balance Manifesto. First of all, we got Ascendancy adjustments, and what will get nerfed is Mistress of Sacrifice from the Necromancer and Ascendant, going back to the pre-buff value of 50%. I don't think this is a good nerf. I think this is a bit of a bad nerf, because the only problem offering here is Bone Offering. They should have nerfed Bone Offering and not all offerings, which are not a problem. And Assassin is getting some numerical nerf, so 1 point for Yoji. Glancing Blows, 2 points for Yoji. This one is getting adjusted. You take more damage now with the Glancing Blows when you block a hit, 65% up from 50, which is actually a pretty hefty nerf. I think the better way here would be to nerf the on-block mechanics with Glancing Blows, so maybe giving you less, 60% whatever, less recovery instead. But hey, here we go. Divine Flesh. I did not predict that one. It was on my list, but on like 7th place, and I only made a video about 5 because I didn't want to make it too long. 5% less max res from Divine Flesh, so you have to invest from other sources. I still think Divine Flesh is great. It's still also great if you only have 85 chaos res, and if you invest further, it becomes as good as it was before. But with more investment, I still think this is a fantastic choice, especially for hardcore, if you want to mitigate chaos and elemental damage. Enduring Cry, another point for Yoji. The cooldown gets adjusted. So I think this is a good nerf. A lot of people that I've seen the reactions from said they don't like the nerf. I like it for the reason that it affects mostly the builds that are running it on left click with call to arms, and not builds that are invested into Warcry cooldown recovery or yeah, because those builds are mostly using Second Wind, and it mostly affects people just spamming the left click Enduring Cry. I think this is a good nerf, and the skill is probably still fine on left click, just not as good as before. Ball Lightning, a lot of people's, probably the top comments below the video were like, oh, Ball Lightning will get nerfed, and yeah, the damage and area will be lowered, which I think is justifiable. Spellslinger, another nerf a lot of people predicted. I didn't. I had it on my list, but not in the top 5. Spellslinger will get a nerf from what I've seen, mostly while leveling, but also a little bit at gem level 20. So yeah, it's a mostly leveling, but also a bit of an endgame nerf, which I think the endgame nerf I don't really see why this would be needed, but the leveling nerf I definitely can agree with. Next up, we got Redemption Sentry Spectres. I think these are on my list, so I think they are justified. Not that I actually think everything on my list was necessarily a good nerf, but I think this one is a bit justified. Because they had too much damage compared to other Spectres. I think the damage nerf is good. I think the life nerf is bad, because if Spectres die too often, they automatically become completely unusable. But I think they probably still will be fine. Of course, I can't know because we don't know the values. But yeah, if you want to start a Spectre Necro, I think you are still fine. If push comes to shove, you can still use Solar Guards or the Lightning Dudes. What's the name? Slave Drivers. So you'd still be fine. 3 specific cluster jewel notables have been had their values adjusted. So Precise Commander, Vicious Bite, and Vengeful Commander. But they said they may make further changes in the future. So these 3 are definitely getting nerfed. How? We don't know. Vitality is now becoming a flat reservation aura, like Precision and Clarity, and all the flat reservation auras are getting their Watcher's Eye modifiers reduced, which I think is a very good change, because for very low investment of just like tiny bit of mana and a gem socket, you would get pretty hefty Watcher's Eye modifiers, which also drove the price up by quite a lot of those modifiers. Also, Vitality now gives flat regen, so it's probably good for leveling and not that good for endgame, but Vitality is kind of like on the back burner on usage numbers anyway, so I think we're completely fine seeing some changes, see if this makes the aura more viable and better and more used. While Impurity Skills. This is the nerf that I predicted, but on a different point. They're nerfing the Impurity auras in a way that they don't give less damage taken, so you can't scale them too infinity or invulnerability with the Supreme Ego anymore. I expected a Supreme Ego adjustment. They adjusted the auras instead, so I think I deserve half a point here because I definitely predicted the right thing, but not like the right spot where they nerfed it, just the build. We got ailment effect, which is kind of interesting that sap and brittle will also now be affected by cold and freeze reduction, cold freeze and like lightning, ailment and shock reduction. I think this is fine, kind of interesting, but yeah, kind of whatever. Projectile behavior ordering, I talked about this before in my last video, and yeah, basically splitting now happens before piercing, forking, and chaining, and also returning now happens if you run out of targets to chain, you still return. It's like a super tiny buff to returning projectiles, like this big. Reduce visibility and stealth. Basically, the darkness farming, I become completely invisible and run through everything. Stuff is kind of gone because all you can do now is gain stealth instead of visibility reductions. And stealth means that you have a reduced area in which people or like enemies will detect you. So you can't completely become invisible. You cannot run through mobs without them seeing you. You can only run kind of close to mobs without them seeing you. I think this could be a very, very big nerf for these like darkness farming builds. Changes to mods with provide flat life regen. Flat life regen getting buffed up to double the amount that they normally provide to be somewhat relevant in endgame. Could actually be usable, but I don't think they will be like top tier desirable mods. But maybe you don't cry as much anymore because they're not super low. And changes to the mod tag system. This basically could be like 2 or 15 other videos. This is just fossil crafting is now a bit more streamlined in and more predictable in what will happen with the tag system in game, and you don't have to rely as much on crafting websites anymore, but you probably still will use crafting what's called Craft of Exile and other crafting sites, because that's still way easier to predict the outcomes of your crafting. And I think with that we're already through the manifesto. Patch notes will be out tomorrow. We will do an inspired learning podcast tomorrow about the patch notes, talk about potential league starting options that we can think that there will be, and yeah, just look at all that stuff. So yeah, I'm doing pretty good. I think I got 4.5 out of 5 predictions right, which means I'm the best at predicting any nerf. So yeah, if you ever want to nerf for next patch, leave a comment below. I will answer like if it will get nerfed or not. Yeah, I'm a prophet now. All right, that's it. Thank you to all my patrons. Subscribe if you're new to this channel. I don't know, buy merch if you haven't seen the merch already, or at least look at this. And I'm Yoji, and I will see you tomorrow.